All right. Well, I'm really glad to be here today. I thought that when I was asked to do this, I just knew I couldn't say no because I have a really deep respect and passion for the work of hospice, and so I'm just really glad to be here. And hopefully, I can give anybody here a little bit better understanding of hospice, as well as answer any questions that you may have about what it's like to be work in the nursing profession in the realm of hospice. So I wanted to start with just a basic understanding of what hospice is. I don't want to assume that everybody knows exactly what that is. So I'm going to just do this quickly, and if there is any questions about it later that I may have missed, feel free to ask. So hospice, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings in about what hospice is. I Well, if you think of it logistically, the hospice care for a person who is no longer able to use any kind of medical care to further enhance their life or keep them alive if they have a life limiting. If a physician determines that they only have 6 months left to live or less, that is usually what qualifies somebody for hospice. Now that is kind of it's a little bit of a bland way of understanding what hospice is, because hospice isn't really where somebody just goes to die. I think that in my experience, what hospice is where somebody goes to make the best quality of life for the time that they have left. Um, I have I am a hospice nurse. I have always worked in an inpatient setting. Hospice can be done for somebody at home. You can have hospice care at home, stay in your home, or you can have hospice care in a facility, a long-term care facility. My experience as a hospice nurse has been in a designated hospice facility that's inpatient. And I think that a lot of times when somebody is having a lot of symptoms that they from their disease process, whether it's cancer, whether it's something else that can't be managed at home, or it's just not a comfortable place to be anymore in terms of managing symptoms, or for people that can take care of them, they can come into a hospice facility, and that's like our care center here at Angela Hospice. There's a lot of hospices have inpatient facilities, and they offer an opportunity for families and people that are gathered around a loved one to just step back and take a little break from doing hands-on care and kind of rest with a knowledge that there's people around all the time, 24/7, that can be available, that understand what the symptoms might be, understand the medications, are working on what that person might need, as well as working on what the family might need and what the people that are caring for the person may need. Um, I want to just introduce myself a little bit, just briefly. As you know, my name is Rebecca. Um, I have been working in hospice for about 20 years now. And for all of that time, like I said, it's been in an inpatient setting. And it's been, I wouldn't have enough time to really describe how significant the effect of that has been on my life. I often think that I have gained more from the people that I've worked with and the families I've talked with than I've ever been able to give them. It just has been a transformational experience. And in fact, that is actually one of Angela Hospice's values, is transformation. And I think the transformation happens for families, for patients, and for the staff, because we really do come together. As a nurse, in specifically, my job is to make sure that the patient is comfortable. That's the primary focus. And that entails physical comfort primarily, at least first off. So if somebody's experiencing a lot of pain, or if they're experiencing a lot of anxiety that is also leading them to have some shortness of breath, is making them not able to breathe, if their process of their disease is causing them difficulty breathing, those symptoms are what I, as the nurse, am responsible to observe and to assess to see how significant they are, to see if they're changing, to see if they're getting worse, to see if what kind of medications and therapies are in place are working for them to help in that scenario to make them more comfortable. And if it's not, it's my responsibility to be able to collect that information and make sure that the nurse practitioner or the physician knows that so that they can determine what changes to make. I take that responsibility very seriously. I think it is very important for me to understand what's going on with each one of my patients physically with their disease process. Because if I can't make the person comfortable physically so that they can at least have a certain degree of ability to rest and be comfortable, then they're not going to be able to use that time to be able to really talk with their friends, to have their family be nearby and really enjoy what's actually more important in life. And that is our connections with people and the people who love us and who have taken care of us for so long in that journey. So I feel like my piece in that is is significant, and I take it very seriously. Um, Obviously, I can't make any changes as a nurse to what medication someone's getting, but I can be eyes and ears for the physician or the nurse practitioner who can make those changes. And so I, in a way, feel like I have a responsibility to help the nurse practitioner and the physician do their job as well as they can do it by doing my job as well as I can do it. Um, so that is my kind of narrow definition of what a hospice nurse does, and that is the core part. That's the part that if I don't get that right, then I can't do anything else, or I can't expand beyond that, because that really is my part of the team. My job, my part of being a team for hospice is to make sure that that person is comfortable. And if they're not, I am responsible to contact whoever whoever is can make the changes to let them know what's going on so that person can get comfortable as soon as possible. Um, so in addition to that, making sure that somebody has that physical comfort where they are actually able to relax and to be comfortable. Um, I wanted to share with you 3 reasons why I decided to become a hospice nurse. I wasn't always a hospice nurse. I've worked in other areas in the past when I was younger, but I started working in hospice about 20 years ago. And I wanted to just go through 3 main points as to why I've stuck with it this long. It has not always been easy, and it has not always even been fun. But even when it's not been easy and it's not been fun, it's always been something I believe in. It's I can't ever think of a time when I didn't believe in it, even when I was maybe emotionally or physically ready to kind of throw in the towel and say, I can't do this anymore. I've always believed in this work. And so, number one of that reason is that I feel like there's respect in hospice. The way hospice is designed is we hold a respect for human dignity as the center point of what we do. Hospice is patient centered, and we center that patient, the person who is getting the hospice care, the person who has a life limiting illness that is defining that person's length of life as 6 months or less. That's the person who drives what we do. We try to adhere to their wishes, and we also try to adhere to the wishes of the family that's around them, because nobody is really an entity unto themselves. Everyone has a family, or if it's not a biological family, it's a group of people for whom they rely on, who support them, who cared for them. And these groups of people can be complex, they can be challenging, they can be full of a lot of kinds of emotions. But I believe that there is a dignity in allowing people to continue to have those connections and to still be a part of that system, even as they're living out the last days, months, and weeks of their lives, because those are the people that are important to them. So we in hospice, we believe in making our decisions around what the family and the patient want. Now, it's not always as simple as, oh, what do you want to do here? Okay, because there's going to be times when we we can't deliver what they're asking for. It might be a legal issue, it might be medically impossible, but I think we always have to hang on to, or not hang on to, but allow the family and the patient to hang on to whatever hopes they have and whatever goals they have for the time that they have left. Um, so I like that part of the model of hospice, that we let the people and we let the family and we let the support system that are important to the person who who knows they're going to die be the central focus of what we do. The other part of hospice that I really, really like is that we function as a team. We function as what we call an interdisciplinary team. And that means that we have several different disciplines that work together to care for a person and for the family and support system that's around them. We have the nurse, like me, who I already described kind of what my very specific role and responsibilities are. We have the physician and the medical team, which is often composed of like a nurse practitioner and a physician's assistant who can make changes and alterations to medications and therapies for that person. And we have social work, and we have spiritual care, and we have other complementary therapies. We've got massage therapists, we have music therapy, and all sorts of other, we have aromatherapy because what we believe in hospice is that it's not just a medical model, and that a person is not just what disease or what illness they have. There's really such a bigger picture of who they are. And hospice focuses on the many aspects of what makes a person who they are, not just what they're suffering from, not just the breast cancer or the uterine cancer, the prostate cancer or the brain cancer, not just what is defining how long their life is going to be, but the aspects that define who they are and what has made their soul sing for their whole life. And we want that to continue to be part of who they are and what the connections they have through hospice. So all of the disciplines work with the family. And what I really like is that the disciplines have a lot of respect for each other. There is no way I could do my job if I did not have the social workers, if I did not have the spiritual care, I did not have the physicians and nurse practitioners, and all of the other people that come around the family and the person whose life is, we know, is ending soon. I could not do my job as well if I did not have their support and their connections with what I do and what they do. We communicate with each other and we make our decisions together about what happens. I really believe that life is complex and that we are all more than just one disease or just one name or one thing in life. Or we're not defined just by what we do as a career or what we or who we happen to be married to or whether or not we're married or what disease we have. I really think there's so many things that are connected to community and people that define who we are. And I really appreciate and have stuck with hospice because I believe hospice values that. And I think that is really important. It's a team effort. Um, we care for the whole family, regardless of who that family is. The family might not be family as we define it, but there's no formula for family. The family is whoever the patient, the person that is struggling with their life ending sooner than they had thought, maybe. Whoever they call their support systems, whoever they call the people they love and who they care about in life. And then the third thing is the sacredness of this moment in people's lives. And when I say the sacredness of the moment where I'm meeting patients and their families, I specifically use that word sacred rather than religious or spiritual because people have many different religions, people have many different spiritual practices. And there's also people who don't believe in a God. And I really believe that there's still a sacredness about all of those people's lives. And the time, there's a value and a sacredness to everyone's choices and their values. And it is an honor for me to step into the space of that person's family, that person's beliefs, that person's value system at the time when someone they love is dying. And so the time is emotionally very raw. There's a lot of vulnerabilities. There's a lot of fear, anger, um, just emotions that are really mixed up, very complex. And it's a very vulnerable time for the patient and the family and the support system. There could be estrangement. There could be people recently reunited because of their hospice diagnosis, and it can be very, very challenging, very difficult. And it is my honor and it is a sacred moment for me to walk into someone's life and someone's space like that. It is important to me that I advocate for them, but that I don't try to change them. I'm a stranger and I'm coming into someone's life and a family situation when they're often at their most vulnerable and behaviors and emotions are all over the place. And it's not there for me to judge. It's for me I can't fix anything for them, but I can be there. And if I can somehow make the patient comfortable, and if I can offer a sense of security, of calm and professionalism, that I will be there to help in whatever way I can possibly offer them a time where anxiety is a little bit lower, where they can maybe process and maybe talk and maybe figure out some things that are long-term hurts, that are long-term issues, where there can maybe be peace for somebody to be able to say goodbye and for the people they love to say goodbye to them. I'm going to end that little part with this little cartoon. It's not really a cartoon, but it says, which is more, I don't know if you can read this, if I'm holding this right, but which is more important, asked Big Panda, the journey or the destination? The company, answered Tiny Dragon. So that kind of captures a little bit of, even though my role as a nurse is very specific in terms of what I do professionally, I feel like the contribution that I can make only connected to the team, the hospice team, actually can be bigger than that for many families. If I don't make sure I don't step in their way in the process of it, but yet I'm there as a support and somebody who does my job well enough so that they have that time, they have that space in their hearts and their souls to actually be able to work on the things that are really more important in life. And I think I'll just open it up to any questions. And if I was very unclear in any of those, please feel free to ask for any clarification as well.
Rebecca, thank you so much. And just two things, and then we do have some questions that I'll share with you. And as I'm doing some updating here, if you have questions, again, you can put them in the chat and I can share them directly with Rebecca, or you can unmute yourself and go right on to asking Rebecca the question directly. But Rebecca, again, I want to thank you for those of you that are on the call and for those of you that will be watching this on the recorded version. You don't know necessarily what this team does until you see it in action. And if I may be personal, I've seen it personally in action in my friends, in my family life, but also in my professional life, being a team member with Angela Hospice here. I think that every day I'm thankful that we have people that have the compassionate and the passionate heart that Rebecca certainly exemplifies here. So again, Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing. We do have some questions, and again, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask questions directly to Rebecca, or you can put them in the chat. But there was a couple that came up, Rebecca. Excuse me. One of the questions was, what other types of nursing have you done, and what led you specifically to hospice nursing?
Yes, I have done some kind of interesting things. I started out right out of nursing school on a step-down cardiac unit Did that for a couple years. Then I did a little bit of traveling around the world. I did some nursing care, believe it or not, in Calcutta, India, working with Mother Teresa's organization. That was only a few months. Actually, I think it was only like 8 weeks. And then I went to graduate school. I got a master's degree in theology, and I started working in a homeless shelter in Boston. And then I went on to work in research. I did some research protocols through the NIH for HIV medications in a community-based center. My husband and I then traveled to a different country and lived for a little while. When I came back, I moved to Ann Arbor. And at that point, I was kind of struggling about what do I do? Because I had gotten this graduate degree. I really liked it. I wanted to stay in something that was related, but I also didn't quite know what that was. And a friend of mine who was a social worker in a hospice in Colorado actually said to me, "Have you ever thought about hospice? Because I think hospice would really pull together a lot of the things that you value, Rebecca." And I tried it, and I was only part-time, very part-time for a little while because I had a couple of young children, and I I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself and my expectations of other people, and hope and caring, and a lot of my definitions of what that means as we interact with each other changed over the time, and I couldn't leave. I thought a few times about leaving hospice, but then when I realized, oh no, I can't not do hospice.
Excellent. Thank you. And it sounds like your heart and experience is in the right place, and we're so glad you're with Angela. Helen has asked, can you be in hospice for more than 6 months?
As a patient, I'm assuming, right? Yes, you can. That is not something that a nurse would decide. That would be something that the medical team would need to decide. There is a process for recertifying somebody after 6 months, and it has to do with medically whether there's been a decline in the patient status and various markers. That's kind of that's a physician's decision. Um, and the nurse plays a part in helping to collect the information and the data and make assessments, but it is ultimately the medical team that decides that. But yes, it is possible.
Excellent. One of the questions, well, it starts with a comment, and I would agree. It said, "You are a blessed angel." So we would agree with that comment. But the other question is, and you touched on this a little bit, but maybe an opportunity to expand a little bit more. But they've asked, how can you cope with such sadness and grief as you perform your job?
That is a very complex question to answer. I have become better at that. Um, it sounds a little bit cold, but I have had to learn how to really draw a line, draw a boundary between my work and the rest of my life. Especially when my children were little, I needed to learn how to compartmentalize it, the sadness and the grief. I also I also remember, I'll just give a short little story here. I remember one time when I was maybe 5 or 6 years into being a hospice nurse, and I was taking care of a woman who was fairly young, dying of breast cancer, and she had two young children. And I was very affected, and I was starting to actually tear up and cry while I was in the room. And other people that were in the room, the family members or the friends of the patient, were starting to kind of turn their attention from the patient to me, and trying to kind of comfort me, almost like trying to give me a hug. And as I went home from work that day, I realized, that is not a good thing. I am not there for them to take care of me. I need to take care of them. And so I will admit that I often step into this kind of little box of being a professional while I'm at work, because I don't want to be the system inside of the room. When I go into a patient's room, what's happening in there cannot be about me. It needs to be about the patient and the people they love. And so I I've I've learned a couple things. One, that I need to kind of use that professionalism as a little box to stay in. And then if I need to cry, I can cry in the car on the way home. And number two, if I can't do that, I need to admit it, and I need to see if there is another nurse that can maybe take over that person, or if we maybe need to make a switch or talk about it somewhere. I know that there's been in the past, in both in previous place I've worked and at Angela, I know there's times when they allow spiritual care and grief support will often have little times for staff to talk and try to process these emotions and learn how to not become cold-hearted, but stay professional in the best sense of the word, not in a cold sense of the word, but in the best sense of the word. So I've learned that too. I've learned to admit when something's getting to me a little bit too closely, and I can't do it. And I think that we have to be able to do that in order to offer the best services to our patients and families. And I do cry on the way home from work a lot. Or yeah, or at home.
I'm gonna, excuse me, combine these two questions, so it's in two parts. So if you need to be repeated after you answer one, I'm happy to do so. So the question is, what's the most rewarding part about working in hospice, and what is the best part about your job? So a little bit different, but the same. So what's
Mhm.
the most rewarding part about working in hospice, and what is the best part about your job?
I I can say without any hesitation that the answer to that question is something I kind of touched on in my presentation, my final point about the sacredness of being in with families and patients during a time of their life that's very, very vulnerable and raw, and yet at the same time very sacred. I have seen families make reconciliations. I have seen people love somebody that they never thought they could love because of a certain lifestyle or not. I have seen so much caring and grace happen in some of these moments that it makes it worth it. And it's very, very touching. And it also has made me a better person. I truly think that being a hospice nurse has done two things to me in my personal life. Number one, it's made me um, be willing to have more fun and spend money in the moment, just because life could be shortened for any of us at any time, and the people that we love could be have their life shortened at any time. And number two, it's made me more gracious with people, and I'm really, really I'm pleased about that. So that if that doesn't quite answer the question, feel free to elaborate more.
Excellent, thank you. We have two more questions, so if there's, I'll read those, but if there's anybody that has any other questions or would like to say anything directly to Rebecca, feel free to take yourself off mute. Here's a question about what can family members do to be more ready to lose someone who is in hospice care?
That there's unfortunately there's not a simple answer. I I what I often tell families that are asking me in the moment, what should I do? Should I be here? Should I do this? Should I do that? I often answer with there's no right or wrong as long as you're not hurting somebody, as long as it's done in a spirit of love and caring for somebody, that there's no right or wrong. And I don't know that you can ever be ready. I don't know that you can ever fully be ready for that moment when you lose somebody that you really love. Um, and I think that the degree to which you aren't ready also just says how deep that connection is. You can, of course, take care of yourself in that process. You know, there are groups. I think there's anticipatory grief groups. There's a lot of grief services from any hospice that you are have in your area. And I know Angela has excellent grief service groups and people to be in contact with. And you can ask, if there's no one else, you can ask the case manager that comes to your home, or you can ask the nurse if it's an inpatient facility to put you in contact with the grief services. You can seek like a personal therapist. um, it's very individual. It depends so much on who you are as a person and what your relationship is like with the person who you are probably going to have to say goodbye to.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Rebecca did a great job of talking and supporting the grief care department that we have here at Angela Hospice. And I'll just say that the grief care services are available to anyone that needs them. They don't have had to go and have a loved one on the care or through the care of Angela Hospice. They're available for the community free of charge. I would encourage you to pass this number along or use it yourself, and you can call our toll-free number and ask to speak to somebody in the grief care department at 866-464-7810. And that's our toll-free number that can be used and shared in our community across, not just with yourselves, but also with friends and family that may need any grief care. If there isn't any other questions, there is one more question for you, Rebecca.
I think I may have, when I was giving my little presentation at the beginning, I think I missed actually naming grief support services as part of the interdisciplinary team, but that they are part of that, and they're the people that are trained in grief support. Grief isn't just after someone dies. Grief is when you are processing it and when you're working through it and learning how to support people that you love that are dying and people that you love who are also supporting the person that is dying. And so that I'm apologizing that I failed to mention that as part of the interdisciplinary team, because it's not just after someone has died, it's actually through the whole process.
Very good point. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Hey, Jen, this is Helen. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Helen.
So this is Helen. I actually work here too, but I just also wanted to say, Rebecca, if you've ever questioned anything that you just said about yourself, I can tell you that you are exactly who you are. You took care of my mother-in-law over the holidays, as you may recall.
Yeah, I do.
And
yeah.
And the team was everything that you spoke of and more.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. You guys are incredible. And the work that you do is priceless. So I just wanted to say that.
You're also strong.
Thank you for sharing, Helen.
Mm-hmm.
Lynn, did you have something? Yeah, Lynn, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to make a comment. I am a clinical instructor and I bring students into the care center on Mondays. Rebecca has worked with the Madonna nursing students for the past several years. And I just want to say, reiterate what Helen said. She is who she is, and she is compassionate, professional, knowledgeable, and it has impacted many, many nursing students who have had the opportunity to do their clinical work at Angela Hospice. and how important it is. I mean, we can study about caring for the older adult, or middle age, whatever age, in their end of life phase, but it is so important to see it, to know how to be it. And Rebecca has been a role model in the way she has carried out her responsibilities at Angela Hospice as a nurse, to my students. And they know how to be a better nurse because they've been able to watch Rebecca and the entire team, but Rebecca
And the rest.
especially has taken so many students under her wings, and it's invaluable. I mean, she's passionate, obviously, about the care she gives in Angela Hospice, but also the importance of educating the next generation of healthcare workers and modeling and mentoring them. And she's been outstanding. And I just want to thank you, Rebecca, for what you've done. You're amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. But it is, I mean, it's a team, really. It is a team.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Lynn. We appreciate it very, very much. So our last question, and I want to say thank you, Lynn and Helen, and all those that gave us questions directly on the chat. But our last question, I think it's a wonderful way to wrap it up. They said, what do you think is what is most helpful for someone to know if they're thinking of beginning a career in hospice?
That it's not any easier than any other nursing job. I sometimes think there's this maybe idea that being a hospice nurse is quote unquote easier, because we're not trying to necessarily save lives, or that it's a slower pace. And I think there might be some areas in where that's the case, but it's not. There is still a very, very clear focus on, we have as nurses, when we pass our nursing license exam, we are responsible for assessing people, for understanding their medications, for being able to educate people about those medications, about what's happening to their body, what to look for, what to report, how to report it, who to call. Those responsibilities, and then reporting these things accurately and thoroughly to the physician or the nurse practitioner. And that responsibility is just as important in hospice as it is in an ICU, a cardiac floor, and a pediatric. I really believe that. I believe we are just as responsible, and we must keep up and be keenly competent in our assessment skills and our ability to communicate with people, in the nursing, and that communicate with the physicians, the medical team, and other nurses, and so that we can take the best care of people we can. Other than that, in addition to that, I guess I should say, I would encourage anybody thinking about becoming a hospice nurse or moving into that area to do some personal work on understanding families and family systems, and understanding this ability to respond to situations as a nurse and a professional, rather than react as an individual, or react with whatever emotions that might pull up in you, or various feelings you might have about someone's choices or someone's way of doing something or way of communicating with each other, because that can be really hard. It's really hard when you have somebody that you're caring for and you have an idea as to what might be the best steps for them to take, or their family to take, in terms of walking a path of being comfortable and being at peace and having the dying process work quote unquote well. But what is well for you might not be what's well for them. And I think those are tools that I didn't have the first maybe 3 to 4 or 5 years that I was a hospice nurse. And then when I did take some actual courses on understanding families and family systems and how to navigate that without letting your own reactions come into play, I felt like I was much more effective in how I can be present with people that are going through this very horrible time.
Rebecca, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for your honesty, your straightforwardness and your transparency, but also for your compassion and your passion that you do what you do for not only the patients, but the family, and in this instance, the community as a whole. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you for your input. And thank you for joining us. Our next presentation is March 15th at 1 p.m. With Jennifer Kirkland, who's on staff here at Angela Hospice, and she'll be talking about 5 wishes. A reminder, a couple things that Rebecca shared is our grief care services, and you can reach those at 866-464-7810. That's our direct toll-free number that you can call to get that information and connected with somebody in our grief care services. And lastly, don't forget to log on to angelahospice.org under the events tab, so you can bid on one of the auction packages to a tropical vacation in Mexico, or a Hilton Head golf excursion, or to climb the top of the towers of the Mackinac Bridge. Again, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed it, and I love answering questions about hospice anyway.
Excellent.
Thanks, Rebecca.
All right, everyone, have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine if it's there with you, and if not, find some more in your life. Have a great day. We'll see you next month.